What is the legal definition of intention, and when is intention just recognized as a puff, as a joke? In this video, we will discuss intention as the fourth video in our 6-part series that aims to answer the question of what makes a contract legally binding. Make sure to stay until the end of the video to find out whether domestic contracts, i.e. contracts with your partner, are recognized as legally binding. But if you're new, let me just very quickly introduce myself. I'm Zoppi, an English qualified solicitor and the managing director of Zoppi, my law firm. And on YouTube, my goal is to make business law easy. The contract law element of intention, also known as intention to create legal relations, is going to be determined by a court on a case-by-case basis. It is a question of fact, and it is decided by reference to the particular facts of a case. So that means that a judge or a court will consider all the facts of the case and then decide whether the intention to create legal relations was present or not. Although when it comes to commercial transactions, so that's between businesses, then the intention to create legal relations is presumed. So the starting point is that there is indeed the intention to create a legal contract. If instead you're looking to rely on the existence of a valid contract whereby the acceptance happened by conduct, which is when a party doesn't expressly state that they agree or they accept the offer, but instead act as if they had accepted the offer, then the intention to create legal relations needs to be proven by you. Intention is an objective test. So it is not subjective, meaning we don't actually look at the person who accepted, for example, a contract and try to determine whether in their thoughts and feelings they actually meant to create legal relations. Instead, it is an objective test and we look at the facts and circumstances of the case. One of the things that we need to consider is whether the acceptance or offer had the intention or was it just a puff or a joke. When we refer to puff, it's the opposite of something that it has the intention of being legally binding. So for example, a marketing puff is when Red Bull says that if you drink their drink, then you will get wings. That isn't a legally binding promise that Red Bull is making to you, instead of just a marketing puff. So when does something have the intention of being legally binding, or instead, when is it just a puff? Well, it is just a puff if to the other party it should have been obvious that it was indeed just a puff. As a top tip, now that we know a little bit more about intention, when drafting your contracts, make sure to not make them too vague. The reason being is that if you make them too vague, then it is likely impossible that that contract is going to be recognized as legally invalid because of a lack of intention. So for example, if an ex-husband tells his ex-wife that she can stay at his house because the ex-wife's mother has died, the law typically would not recognize that as an offer that has the legal intention to be legally binding. This will not be legally binding because it is unclear for how long the ex-wife can stay and under what terms can she stay. But before we discuss domestic contracts and their validity, make sure to subscribe to my channel to continue to receive to the point, pragmatic and practical legal information. Also, if you want professional legal advice from a qualified solicitor, make sure to reach out. I have my contact details below. Amazing. So domestic contracts. Typically, the court would not recognize domestic contracts as legally binding because it is missing the intention of having legal consequences. So for example, if you and your partner decide that you will cook and your partner will clean the dishes, it is not going to be recognized as a legal contract typically because it is unlikely that if your partner doesn't clean the dishes, you intended and you both intended for you to be able to sue and claim against your partner. But this doesn't mean that you cannot have legally binding contracts between partners. So for example, when it comes to prenups, so long as it's professionally drafted, all of the elements of a legally binding contract are present and the two partners each received independent legal advice, then that contract has a very good chance of being recognized as a legally binding contract. So until now we've discussed the offer, acceptance, consideration and intention of being legally binding. But we also need to discuss certainty, the last element of a legally binding contract. And to learn more about certainty, watch this video right here.